Hi there, it's Cheryl Lynn, and I wanted to talk today about the idea of life contracts and that we come to this life with a set of goals or things that we want to accomplish or that we feel called to accomplish, like raising children or having a certain career. And then at a certain point, we start feeling like we've lost our sense of purpose. We've kind of forgotten why we do the things that we do. And often what it is we have to renew our contract. Our contract expired. We completed it. We did what we came here to do in a certain area, and there's more. So I first discovered the idea of this, and you can take it at literally or as a metaphor. It's up to you. When I had a client quite a while ago who she had been diagnosed with a fatal disease, and she came to me and was panicking, as you might expect, because she felt like, she didn't have a lot of hope in recovering. And we talked about it. And when I tuned in to what was really going on with her, and she was probably, I would say she was in her mid 50s when this happened. So she wasn't too old. If she had died, which she didn't, people would have said, oh, she died so young. But the reality is that she felt like there was nothing that she could do about it. And what had happened was that she had lost her sense of purpose. She felt like she had raised her children. She had, done certain things in her career that had been her goals. And she was kind of in this new phase where she felt kind of in limbo. And she wasn't quite sure, she was experimenting with a few different things, but she wasn't quite sure what direction to take next, and had more questions than she had answers. And like many people, she was much more comfortable having answers than sitting with not knowing what to do. So she came with this diagnosis and felt really discouraged. But when I talked to her about what I was seeing, that she had to re-up her contract. It just came so clear to me that you have to decide, first of all, that you want to keep living. You've done all these amazing things, and it's your choice. You could leave now. Like, look, you did this, you accomplished this, and you accomplished that. And back in previous generations, living to 55 you were doing pretty good. You were there long enough to raise children to an age where they were self-sufficient, so the procreation contract had been fulfilled, and you could die young then. But now with modern medicine and everything that we have at our disposal, we're living a lot longer. We're living past our reproductive years. And so how to take that information and say, okay, well, now what? What am I supposed to, like, I've done all these things, now what? And that's what I explored with this woman, this client. And she realized that she was kind of stuck in this feeling of having given up on a certain level. Like, one of the reasons she couldn't make a decision about which way to go with her career was because she was tired. She was kind of feeling worn out by it and by life in general. And when she was faced with this diagnosis, she said, you know what? I don't feel like I'm done yet. And she wasn't. She was not done yet. And she'd had this passion for something that she never really had thought about doing as a career. But now she was like, well, what do I have to lose? Like, I could decide to live and actually do this and make a difference in the world. And so she had this she renewed her contract, and she said she literally did it as an exercise and made a contract, with life, and said, okay, I'm going to stick it out. And miraculously, her symptoms that she had disappeared. And then with very little intervention on my part as an energy worker, and very little intervention from her Western medical doctors. The condition was completely cured. And it didn't just go into remission, like there was no trace. It was as if it had never happened. So this points to, now with her, she was 55. It doesn't mean that it only happens to older people, because although I do have, I had for a period of time, it seemed like I was working with a lot of people who are even older, more like in their 70s, who struggled with the same thing. Like, well, if I want to live and be healthy into my old age, if I'm going to keep going, I don't want to have disease or, natural processes get in my way. So it came again to the idea of, I have to renew my contract. I have to decide what would make it worth living another 20, 30 years. What would fuel me? What would my passion be? I might not have the energy that I had when I was 40 to do something, but I can still do this, and I can, and I've always wanted to travel, or I've always wanted to do these things. So again, it's that energetic saying yes to life. I want to renew that contract. So as I started to say, this can happen when you're even younger. It doesn't have to be an old age thing. When you've completed certain cycles, there's like a little bit of a grieving process that the cycle has ended, or even it can feel like a little death. Like, for instance, when you've raised your children and they go off to college, or they go off out into the world to do their own thing, often that's a time where people go through a similar kind of feeling, like, okay, well, I raised my kids, now what? Now what is my purpose beyond that? So it's the same thing, like, what's the new contract? I'm not mom anymore. I mean, you're still mom, or dad, but what's this next phase going to look like without that particular role and identity? And again, you can look at the idea of contracts in the same way. So I guess I want to leave you with just the idea that at any point, no matter what point you are at in your life, if you've been kind of feeling discouraged, or like you're not quite sure what you're supposed to be doing next, think of it in terms of your life contract. Maybe you're in a transition where you've completed something and it's time to move into this next phase. Maybe you're not quite there yet in that transition, and maybe it's more that, having kind of thinking about the future, having dreams that kind of fuel your present moment, where those things that you maybe aren't quite ready to do, but you want to start dreaming about them and imagining what this next phase might be like, even if you're still raising your kids, or even if the career that you've had, you haven't retired yet and you're still in it. Like, start including some of those things that you might see yourself doing in this next phase as a way to more gracefully transition into your next contract. So I'd love to hear if you listen to the replay of this, if you have any thoughts, ideas, feel free to send me a message or email me at cosmicconduit88@gmail.com. Until we meet again, bye now.